Well, a euphoric start to the market saw stocks bolt out of the gate. The Dow was up 283 points, and then, well, it faded into the close, and we finished slightly lower. I got to tell you, probably was the most challenging session of 2018, because at one point we were down 400 points from the intraday high. So the bears, they came out growling, believe it or not. Right out the gate, the bears were sort of making their move, and there was talk of a blow-off top as the major indices were shattering these intraday records. Keep in mind, the swiftest 1,000-point move in Dow Jones history, just 7 days. That's a mind-boggling move in that milestone, considering the old record was 24 days. Now, there are signs that this kind of session, that was going to happen sooner or later, right? We had a series of sessions that were powered by panic buying. I told you about it last week. But that said, the Dow is still up more than 4% for the year. And more importantly, the underlying fundamentals are still in place. Now, near term, though, the market move can be it can move for an assortment of reasons, let's face it, beyond fundamentals. So on that note, I want to look at two factors tonight that I take into account when assessing the market, not long term, but on a shorter term basis, technical factors and behavioral analysis. Now, with technical factors, this market, having lurched straight up, is really a million miles away from its two key moving averages. I usually use the 50 and 200-day moving averages on an exponential basis. Right now, those numbers are 24,399 and 22,320. We're not near there. So your other key numbers would be 25,633. That was the low on Friday. Now, if it hadn't held today, this would have been what they called an outside day with a higher high and a lower low than a prior session, and that's usually a bearish sign. Then 24,824. That's where the Dow broke out at the beginning of the year and took off like a rocket. Resistance becomes support. You want to see that hold. Then there's behavioral analysis. For the years, the market rally has been deemed the most hated rally in history. But you know what? The fact of the matter is that this rally was the most ignored in history. The level of indifference, as measured by fund flows and sentiment, hovered at record levels for long periods of time. But finally, it happened. In late November, individual investors got very excited, and according to the American Association for Individual Investors, optimism spiked to a 7-year high in the week ending January 3rd. Pulled back a little bit last week, but still 10 percentage points higher than your average bullishness level historically. Interestingly, institutional investor confidence actually declined in December and actually peaked in July, reflecting lower equity holdings. This is for the big guys, right, according to State Street Bank. Unconventional wisdom. Okay, here it is. Conventional wisdom always says that we should always zig when individual investors are zagging. But I think that they have been wiser than the professionals and who continue to underperform. I also think that the old Wall Street axiom about the dumb individual investor is now seen as a canard, because more and more individual investors are self-directed, they're disciplined, and they have a knowledge of market history. This doesn't mean that they're never going to blink or panic, but right now, buying the dip is what everybody's really worried about more than anything else. So as money continues to pour into this market from the sidelines, I think, you know what, you might get some more anxiety, you may get less conviction with this new money, but I still think that it's the pros who need to find a way to make up lost ground. We may get a return of volatility. Today, the so-called VIX index popped more than 14%, but you got to remember, this thing is near a 5-year low. So while there could be wilder gyrations, I don't think we're going to get a lot of days like today with 400-point swings in the Dow. That said, I'm guessing the tops based on the market, the charts and the emotions. Listen, it's hard to figure out where a top is going to be. So you might want to pick a near-term top to keep in mind that there are millions of people out there that have missed this rally. And if you go back to March of 2009, there are literally millions of people who were initially proud that they got out, right? The market was falling off, it sold off. But since then, they've lamented the fact that they've waited for the next leg down, and they've missed one of the best rallies in their whole life. But Dr. Jackson just kept doubling, even sometimes having to triple down that President Trump is in, quote, excellent health, and that no one should doubt his mental capacity. To my panel now, Tammy Bruce, Fox News political contributor, Jillian Melcher, Wall Street Journal editorial page writer, Stephanie Hamill, National Diversity Coalition for Trump advisor, and a reporter for One America News Network. Also, Vince Colanese is with us. He's the editorial director of the Daily Caller. Stephanie, let me start with you. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at the rear admiral, at the one-star admiral, and I got to tell you, they seem so dejected that apparently President Trump is in amazing physical condition, but also he has all of his mental faculties.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what we saw today. It's actually absurd what these reporters were asking. They would have never asked President 44 about these questions. What we learned from this is that President Trump is in excellent health. We know that he needs to lose a few pounds. That's what his doctor says. They're going to work on that in the next year. They want him to lose between 10 and 15 pounds. President Trump says he's up for it. He wants to do it more through diet than exercise. But for them to just hammer on his mental health, they're the ones who need a mental health exam.
You know, I got to tell you, Vince, I think after that press conference, a few of them either went to get a mental health exam or knocked a few back. This was not what they were hoping for.
No, not at all. Can you imagine not wanting someone to get a clean bill of health? That's like
right.
That's a ridiculous way to view this thing. Yet that was the way the press acted today. And I think that assessment's right. I think, if anything, the mental state of the people in the room was actually more exposed than the president's was, which is to say that there were people in there that were wishing the president of the United States had some sort of ailment. And what this is it's animated by a notion that he needs to be disqualified somehow. And they're using his health right now as a way to do that. I can't imagine the press treating a Hillary Clinton presidency anywhere near the same way. Remember, during the campaign, serious questions about her health, and Washington Post reporters were recommending to the rest of us that we stop asking questions. Eventually, she fell into a van, and then we had to change the calculus there.
Yeah, exactly. There were a lot of rumors swirling around that campaign, ladies. But, you know, again, it's one thing, okay, we see President Trump with the Diet Cokes and the McDonald's all the time, so it's a given. Maybe you thought he had high cholesterol or whatever, but they didn't. The main focus, though, Tammy and Jillian, was the fact that they wanted to hear that perhaps there was something wrong, that we've seen signals, the slurred speech or something that proves maybe he's mentally incapacitated.
Well, they're desperate for confirmation bias in some fashion. They thought they'd hear a nugget that they could expand on, and they didn't. In fact, one of the reporters did ask us, how can you be eating McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and be okay? And the doctor said, it's genetics. So even the president's genetics are politically incorrect, effectively, is what we found. But this is important, and our colleagues here have made this point, that this reveals not just an important day, not just the condition of the President of the United States, but the nature of what is supposed to be the media, almost without fail. All of them were desperate to find something other than the truth. They wanted to find something in a Michael Wolff style, that's something that might ring true, then as a result it is true. But this doctor, who's been the doctor since before Obama, and as we've discussed earlier, Sarah Sanders making it clear that that was his past, that you can't say that this is about political bias. So good news for the president, good news for America, bad news for the legacy media.
So I got one headline from the Daily Mail USA, Jillian. Trump is officially overweight with BMI index 29.9, takes daily anti-baldness pills, and needs to change his diet. So they found whatever the negatives were elevated to the headline.
They did. I mean, I think what this showed is not a lot of surprises. We're talking about a guy who doesn't drink, who doesn't use tobacco products, who eats a lot of junk food. I don't think that these findings are particularly surprising. And on the mental health thing, I will say, I think this is part of the left's tendency to pathologize behavior that they don't like. Sometimes he does say really surprising and unwise things. I don't necessarily think that's a mental illness. Maybe a judgment problem occasionally.
Well, or it could be just a 70-year-old billionaire who's just is accustomed to speaking his mind, right? And hasn't adjusted to the office. But certainly, you know, Stephanie, you know, I saw one tweet from, I guess I would call her a former Republican, that said, well, the cognitive test isn't enough. There needs to be other tests to make sure. And, of course, let's keep in mind that this President Trump insisted on this test, and apparently no other president ever had to take it before.
Yeah, well, the White House doctor said that there was really no reason for it. Trump volunteered for that portion of the test. But, yeah, what we're learning is he's a very healthy man. He has more energy than a lot of people that are in their 30s and 40s. Anyone who has spent time with the president will tell you that. So, again, they're just fishing around looking for a story because they don't want to talk about how the economy is on fire, how women are getting jobs, how Black Americans and Hispanics are getting jobs. And we touched on this, how they would have never treated a former president like this. Obama was a chain smoker for 30 years. Could you imagine the effects that had on his body? And he was caught several times smoking at the White House during his tenure.
Right, real quick.
Well, and also Bill Clinton's health as an example. Ends the presidency with needing a triple bypass. No one ever asked about the nature of his health in that position.